Robert Reich wrote a fascinating piece day before yesterday. It's migrating all across the internet. I think he first posted it over at robertreich.org, and I've seen it on Alternet. I've seen it on Huffington Post and whatnot. And his headline, or at least the alternate headline, was Robert Reich has a big, urgent idea for Hillary. Will she listen? And he writes, and I want to use this as the stepping off point for what's going to be basically a multi-hour rant with a whole lot of pieces to it here today about the state of democracy in the United States and what we need to be doing about it. Robert Reich points out that Hillary Clinton, the presumptive nominee of the Democratic Party, now needs a big idea. Something that people are really going to rally around. People tend not to rally around somebody because they've got a great resume. They tend to rally around big ideas. You know, John Kennedy, we're going to put a man on the moon in 10 years and bring him back safely. Franklin Roosevelt, we're going to end the Great Depression. We're going to win World War II. Lyndon Johnson, we're going to declare a war on poverty and cut it in half in less than a decade. All of these things are big, consequential things. And Robert Reich's suggestion for what Hillary Clinton should be focusing on in her campaign, I think, is a brilliant one, and I think it's completely consistent with her values and her history, or at least largely consistent. And that is democracy. So the big idea I'm talking about is democracy. Everyone knows that our democracy is drowning under big money. Jimmy Carter was on this program just a few months ago, and he had this to say about the situation of big money in government.
Our Supreme Court has now said, unlimited money in politics. It seems a violation of the principles of democracy. In the minute or so we have left, your thoughts on that?
It violates the essence of what made America a great country in its political system. Now it's just an oligarchy with unlimited political bribery being the essence of getting the nominations for president or the elected president. And the same thing applies to governors and U.S. senators and Congress members. So now we've just seen a complete subversion of our political system as a payoff to major contributors who want and expect and sometimes get favors for themselves after the election's over.
Yeah, and it's not just sometimes. It's like all the time. And, there's a lot of dimensions to this, but the question essentially for my hour is, how do we turn an American oligarchy into an American democracy? Now, I was originally going to say back into an American democracy. There are those who would, the kind of cynics who would say it's never been an American democracy, but it's sure been a hell of a lot more democratic in the past than it is right now. And I mean, look at the study that Page and Gillens did out of Northwestern and Princeton universities, where they looked at over 1,700 pieces of individual legislation and concluded that the probabilities of in fact, here, this is in Robert Reich's piece, 1,799 policy issues. Their conclusion, the preferences of average Americans appear to have only a minuscule, near zero, statistically non-significant impact upon public policy. Case in point, yesterday, 90% of Americans, now it depends on which study you're looking at and exactly how it's worded, but basically when you're talking about assault weapon bans, taking weapons of war and saying, these things are in the same category as shoulder-fired rocket launchers. They're not legitimate target weapons, they're not legitimate hunting tools, and they're not legitimate self-defense tools. These are weapons of war, like was used by the shooter in Orlando, like was used by, the shooter in Newtown, like was used by the shooter in Colorado. So somewhere between 80 and 95% of Americans agree with Ronald Reagan's old position that weapons of war should not be for sale in the United States. And yet, what happened with the vote yesterday in the Senate? What happened with the vote in the Senate? There were 4 attempts to amend this thing. There's going to be another one today. Susan Collins, the only rational Republican left in the United States Senate, is going to offer a compromise, but it'll be a compromise. It'll be a half-assed compromise on this thing. There's a great piece over at usuncut.com. It's titled "See How Much the NRA Paid Your Senator to Vote Against Gun Reform." And I'm gonna go through the names, but whenever the amounts are over, say $500,000, I'm gonna let you know how much. If any of these people represent you in Congress, the phone number for Congress is 202-225-3121, and you might want to call them up and let them know what you think. And if you have any thoughts or suggestions for the question for this hour, how do we turn an American oligarchy? Because we are now firmly an oligarchy. This is not a democracy anymore. If this was a democracy, there would have been rational gun control passed yesterday. Constitutionally appropriate, rational gun control. So anyhow, Lamar Alexander, Republican from Tennessee. These are recipients of cash from the NRA. Kelly Ayotte, Republican from New Hampshire. John Barrasso, Republican from Wyoming. Roy Blunt, Republican from Missouri. He took over $1.4 million from the NRA. John Boozman, Republican from Arkansas. Richard Burr, Republican from North Carolina, took over $800,000 from the NRA. Can you spell blood money? Shelley Moore Caputo of West Virginia, $300,000. Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, $2.8 million. Bill Cassidy, Republican from Louisiana. Thad Cochran, Republican from Mississippi. Susan Collins has only taken $18,000 from these guys, so she's going to propose something reasonable today. Bob Corker of Tennessee, John Cornyn of Texas, Tom Cotton of Arkansas. Tom Cotton of Arkansas, you know, the head of the 47 traders, he's taken $1.968 million from the NRA. He's only been in Congress a short while. But he's got his money-grubbing, blood-covered hands out there. Mike Crapo, he's a Republican from Idaho, $52,000. Ted Cruz, $75,000, Republican from Texas. Steve Daines, Mike Enzi from Montana and Wyoming. Joni Ernst, remember Miss Pig Castrator? She's taken $3,100,000 from the NRA. Do you think she's going to vote in your interest? You think she gives a damn about whether your kids are killed? Joni Ernst, $3.1 million from the NRA. Deb Fisher, Republican from Nebraska. Jeff Flake from Arizona. He's taken over $300,000. Cory Gardner from Colorado. This guy just got in. With the help of Mara Liasson on NPR lying about his positions on abortion, Cory Gardner has taken $3.8 million from the NRA. The Republican from Colorado. Lindsey Graham, Chuck Grassley, Orrin Hatch, Dean Heller, John Hoeven, James Inhofe, Johnny Isaacson. Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, $600,000 from the NRA. James Lankford from Oklahoma. John McCain has taken $7.7 million from the NRA. Mitch McConnell, $1.2 million from the NRA. Jerry Moran, Lisa Murkowski, Rand Paul. Rand Paul only took $2,500. He's a piker. David Perdue, Republican from Georgia. He's taken $1.8 million from the NRA. Rob Portman, $1.4 million from Ohio, Republican from Ohio. Pat Roberts, Republican from Kansas, $1.5 million from the NRA. Consider the amount of blood money that they're having to pour on these people to keep America the country where we're all at risk.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And the king of them all, Thom Tillis in North Carolina, $4.4 million from the NRA.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.